What you're looking at here is the Hallicrafters SX-42 from 1946. It had 15 tubes and it was a really fancy rig, very heavy, and it was the first electronic device, believe it or not, according to what it says on this article here, the first electronic device to win an International Design Award from New York's Museum of Modern Art. How about them apples? And of course that information right there comes from an article in Antique Radio Classifieds from June 1996. So I think that's a pretty slick thing. 15 tubes. Now the following year, this was 1946, the following year, 1947, they came out with this little brother, the cheaper model, the Hallicrafters SX-43, which it covered one less band than the SX-42, and it only had 11 tubes. And this is what we're going to be working on for our next project. Not this exact one, but one like it. So stick around. Well, hello again, and welcome to our new project on the bench. The Airline 62198 is gone, picked up by my grandson's wife. And in its place is this SX-43 that I just spoke to you about. The background on this radio is kind of interesting. I mentioned that I wanted a SX-43 as my first boat anchor when I was a member of the Antique Radio Forum. But one of the Antique Radio Forum members by the name of Kurt Reed, he had been on that forum. He was a driving force on that forum at the time. He knew all about everything. He was just an amazing guy. He had been a ham radio, amateur radio operator for, I don't know, 350,000 years, I guess. Anyway, he knew everything about everything, and he really did. He was an extremely bright man. Unfortunately, he died one night, just suddenly, boom, it was it. We all got a notification from his sister that he had passed away in the middle of the night. Nobody knew why. Anyway, he told me, he said, John, I mentioned I wanted one of these. Prior to this, I had never heard of a Hallicrafters. But I got looking around for a boat anchor because everybody was mentioning boat anchors all the time. I had no idea what that was. And I was not a ham radio operator at that time. Anyway, I looked up boat anchors and I came across this Hallicrafters. I said, now that's a nice looking rig right there. I like that green stuff. This stuff lights up green, I like that. So I got on the Antique Radio Forum and I told everybody, I said, I'm thinking about getting one of these SX-43s by Hallicrafters. Well, Kurt Reed, he jumped up there and he said, nah, John, no. He said, you really don't want an SX-43. What you really want is a Hammerlin HQ-129X as your first boat anchor. He said, trust me on this. They're easier to work on until you get your feet wet and you understand all about them. Then you can go ahead and pick up an SX-43. He said, but right now, I highly recommend you stay away from the Hallicrafters. I said, well, okay, I acquiesced to him. He knew more about these things than I did, so I went ahead and I found the SX, the HQ SX-129X. I found it for I got it for $35 for a guy out of Florida. Later on, I picked up the speaker. A few years later, I think I paid like $45 for it. I paid more for the speaker than I did the actual receiver. It's a general coverage receiver. Anyway, I happened to mention that in that story, I believe. I mentioned it in one of my previous videos a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, that I really never did get that SX-43 I wanted. One of these days I was going to get one. Well, next thing I knew, what comes flying through the door but a big box inside was an SX-43. I said, now who sent this to me? It was sent to me by our good buddy and subscriber Ron C. down in Florida. He heard me say that I wanted an SX-43, so he took it upon himself to go buy one, I assume on eBay or somewhere, and had it sent to me. I said, or he had it sent to himself, and then he turned around and sent it to me. I'm not sure, but I was very grateful for that, because I never expected him to do that. I don't expect people to do things like that, but he did it, and I went ahead and accepted it. And it sat around for quite a while because I just never got around to it. And then I decided one day to pick it up and let's see if we can get it going. And it did in fact work. And I just turned it on, brought it up slow on the variac, and it did work. And here's the proof. Man, I like that. Good stuff there, good stuff. Now after a while I realized that the dial string on this thing was really loose. I mean, I could turn these things and they would maybe move a little bit, maybe a little. I was not getting what I wanted. I had to reach in here with my hand, if I remember. No, I reached in here with my hand and turned the tuner with my hand like this to get it to work, you know, to get the channels to come in, because the dial string was so loose. So I decided, well, I'm going to take off this, you know, this front faceplate here, take all the knobs off, and just pull it down and tighten up the dial string, which I did. That's all I did. I removed the knobs, removed the front plate, tightened up the dial string to where it works real nice now, put the faceplate back on, and it never worked again. It has not worked. I mean, it wouldn't do anything, nothing, and no sound, nothing. I just couldn't believe it. I didn't do anything to it. I just tightened up the dial string. So it may have been coincidence. I don't know what the deal was. So I started working on it on and off for a while. And then wifey got real sick. And I couldn't really spend a lot of time working on this either. I couldn't spend a lot of time doing anything, really. And my mind was never on what I was trying to do. And if I remember right, I think I've got all of the electrolytic capacitors disconnected. I think I was in the middle of replacing those or re-replacing them. I can't remember. But it's kind of screwed up underneath. Let me show you what it looked like when I got it. Well, that's what it looked like when I got it. I did not put any of these orange, all of these orange drops were in there when I got it. I am not a big fan of orange drops. Not that they don't work well, it's just they take up too much room. I've never put an orange drop in a radio yet. But, you know, I went through, I believe, if I recall, I went through and checked every one for where they're supposed to be, and they're in the right spot. But the electrolytics, I'm going to have to go through and take a look at the electrolytics on this thing. I think this is what I put in there. I got to check all the wiring on these electrolytics, find out what the problem is, and try to get this thing to turn on again. The only problem was it requires a 500 ohm speaker. And I'm like, what am I going to, 500 ohm speaker? So I looked them up on eBay at the time, and they wanted a fortune for those things. These people are crazy to ask these prices. Well, since then, the prices have only gone up. You know, so they got even crazier. Some guys want a couple $100 or more for a speaker for this thing. And I just waited and waited and waited. Finally, I got lucky and managed to pick up a original speaker for the SX-43. I picked it up for about 25% of what everybody else was charging. Some of them were charging unbelievable prices for this stuff. I don't know what's going on eBay on those radios. It's worse now than it ever was. You know, some of these guys, one guy wanted, I think it was $120,000 for one floor model radio that was worth about, I don't know, maybe $100. It's incredible. I don't know what's going on. So I really have to look for bargains. And I strictly buy it now and make offers. That's the only way I'll buy, because when you make an offer, they take it and everything's fine. So I've had to sand down quite a bit of rust that was on it here, there, and everywhere. And I'm going to first hit it with this, come on, why is this blurry now? Come on, there we go. I'm going to first hit it with this 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. So let's see what happens. I've never used this before. Hopefully it'll work. That's kind of strange color, huh? That's alright. I've got something else to go over the top of that. I'm interested in filling in small little things on it. Alright, let me finish up the bottom. This is the bottom. I want to do the bottom first, and then I'll flip it over and do the other parts. And if a little bit of overspray gets inside, don't care. While the sandable primer coat dries in the Arkansas sun, finally, Arkansas sun, God, I love saying that now. We're going to go ahead and work on the grill. I'm going to go ahead and sand this down very lightly. This sandable, I'll sand it down very lightly with, I think I got some 1000 grit paper in there, and then we'll give it another coat, because there's, well, I guess not. It won't take much to sand that down, trust me. All the way around it, and then we'll go ahead and give it another coat. But meanwhile, we'll go ahead and work on the grill. Now originally this thing was black, front and rear. This is the rear, but it turned kind of a grayish over the years. I don't know what the deal is on that. It's really messing the camera up, isn't it? Anyway, it kind of turned to grayish. So the question was, do I want to paint it black? I don't know. Now I'm hitting it with 1000 grit wet dry sandpaper. The only place you can buy it is at an auto parts store. They don't sell it in Walmart and places like that. Auto parts store only, or a paint store that specializes in auto paint rather. And then I'm just knocking off any roughness that's there. Not very much at all, just barely touching it. Of course, it's so fine that it wouldn't do much anyway. 1000 grit is really fine stuff. Alrighty, tidy, that's the bottom. I thought I'd paint it first, and that's about the right color that thing was to begin with. Oh, that looks really good now. I just wish it didn't have so many deep gouges and rust spots. There was some pretty rusty stuff on this thing, but it looks a whole lot better. The last thing we have to clear coat is the front cover to this speaker. And I went out to Radio Days, just like I mentioned in a previous project that we just finished, and I picked up the decals, the water slide decals, for the front cover, and I've already got them on. They look exactly like they did when they came out of the factory. Now, of course, now you can see the water slide decal edge here, but we're fixing to put clear coat over the top of this, and it'll make them disappear. And then we can go ahead and start putting everything back together. But first, now when you order these things, they come in, they give you two complete sets of what it is you need. So I guess if you muff one up, you can always, you still got a backup. But you know, if you don't know how to put on a water slide decal, it's no problem. Just go on YouTube, type in how to apply water slide decals. There must be a million channels that show you how to do that. They also give you instruction sheet on how to do theirs. So, and I only paid like, I think it was $10 for a double set of these, plus mailing costs. Now, I can't make these for that kind of money. They come in a nice cardboard thing, and well protected. They do a good job. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to shake up this old can of clear. Again, it's going to be satin enamel, and then I'm going to go ahead and spray this entire thing, and you will see the edges of these things. Of each of these water decals will just flat disappear. Well, that turned out really nice. I'll tell you what, those you can barely see those the outline edge of those water slide decals. If you look really close, you can see it, but it's all pretty much disappeared. This one here, you can barely see, but that looks really nice. I like it. Well, the gray turned out really good. Now it's time for the final touch. I'm going to put a nice coat of, again, satin clear enamel, which is it's always my go-to clear. The cabinet has been all clear coated all the way around, top, bottom, sides, front, everything. The back, not the front, but the back, and whatever front area it requires. And it looks really nice. Man, she's as smooth as silk. And before I cleaned it, I made sure to take sanded it all down, everything. There was a schematic, just like you see right here, only a little smaller. They put them on the bottom of these things, which was kind of a dumb thing to do, and because they put really tiny legs on the bottom, and of course people were always grabbing it and picking it up and everything, and they were tearing them up. Fortunately, this one had a fairly decent one left on the back. I was able to take a photograph and reprint it. Now, I'm not going to stick it back on the bottom. I was going to do it initially, and I said, no, that's a dumb move. I'm going to put it inside this envelope, and I'm going to lay it down in here and tape it in place, like I've seen in some other things. On the back, I wrote a little note here to tell them who I was and when it was restored. So that'll be our next step. One more thing I have to do. I drilled out this thing that was riveted on. And just like the switch on the front was also riveted on, I drilled that baby out. I didn't like those rivets on there. So this will be going back in. I cleaned it up and shined it up and clear coated it. It looks really nice. And I made sure that you tape off you take the screws out and you tape off the metal underneath, and then after it gets all clear coated, you take it back off just like anything else, and it will fit right back on there like that. It's going to look pretty slick. Now the screws that hold this thing in also had to be clear coated because they'll rust if you don't. Just jam it all the way through a cardboard and then just spray it, and you won't have to worry about any rust on it, at least for the near future. Now, doesn't that look good? Yes, it does. You know, when you do a restoration, it's the details that count. And the schematic is taped in. What do you say we get this whole mess together and see what it looks like? Well, everything is soldered up. The wires are connected to the rear here. And before I close it up, I want to make sure I've got sound coming out of it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to tear it all back apart again, and I don't want to do that. Then I just use a 9-volt battery, jumpered to the 2 connections on the rear. Here we go. We're good. We're good. We can go ahead and put it together. Now on the inside of the front cover, you will see a date stamped down there. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't notice it until I started cleaning it. It had quite a bit of dirt over it. August 19th, 1947. Is that cool or what? The very last thing we have to do is get rid of these crummy little stupid legs. Look at these things. This is what was on it originally. They had it sitting up here like this, screwed into the holes. I just couldn't believe that. There's a great big giant thing like this, and they put these stupid scrubby little feet on that thing. Well, I'm doing something different. We're going with these babies. These are rubber stoppers. I got the idea from a YouTuber named Jeff Tranter. He's a smart guy, by the way. He put one like this. He used a rubber stopper on, I think it was the bottom of his HW101 Heathkit transceiver, because one of the legs was missing. I said, well, if he can do that, I can do it too. So I drilled a small hole up through the center. I tried to get it as close to the middle as I could, but it won't make any difference. I drilled a small hole to fit the shank on the screw, and then a little larger hole, maybe, I think maybe a 1/2 inch up in there to accommodate the head of the screw. So all I got to do now is put these babies up here and screw them on down there, and hopefully they'll work. I do believe that looks a whole lot better than them little tiny squishy things. Let's go ahead and turn it around and get it to stand up nice and proud. Well, there she is, standing all tall and everything. She looks really good. The only problem I have with it is someone along the way at some point bent this whole thing down, and it's created a space there, as you can see. I tried to bring it back up, but I didn't want to damage any more of the speaker. I mean, look, I paid $50 for it. Big deal, right? These things are selling for $200 and some a piece. I got real lucky. So I got real lucky to find it, and I could put up a little flaw maybe at a later date. I'll try to get it back up, but I put a jack in there with a piece of, a board on top, board on the bottom, and I jacked it from here, and it came up, and I didn't want to go any further. And as soon as I let the jack down, it went right back where it was. So I said, well, we're not going to keep messing with that thing. I think it looks fine just the way it is. It's beautiful. I'm happy with it. It'll match up very nice with the SX-43. Well, that's about it, folks. In about 2 weeks, we'll be cranking up on this thing. I need some time to do a couple other things between now and then. Still pretty cold in the mornings around here. We had ice all over my pickup truck this morning, and I can't believe it for the middle of March. Anyway, I have all my documentation to start the project right here. Everything I need, parts, all kinds of additional schematics. And I took the basic schematic down to Office Depot. I had it blown up real big so we can read it and we can see it. It'll be a lot easier. And that's about it. So I hope you'll come back in a couple of weeks, and let's plow through this baby together from one side to the other. Until next time, this is John.